when he once again abandoned the two of us, mother and son, to go off in search of his first love. I held my little boy in my arms and froze to death in that night when heavy snow sealed off the mountain. A day later, rescue workers went up the mountain and found my body, along with my son, whom I had shielded in my arms. My son had fallen into a coma and was saved only after 2 days of emergency treatment, when his father came to take him away. The very first words out of his mouth were, "Mom is dead. Are you satisfied now?" 1. I had never spoken ill of Gu Yan in front of my son. Even though his heart had always belonged to his first love and he had never once been a decent father or husband, subconsciously, I said to my son, "Don't argue with your father." Halfway through, I realized I was only a spirit and could no longer speak to them, rarely gentle. Gu Yan softened his tone and said to his son, "Your mother is fine. Her health isn't good. So I sent her abroad for treatment." He really was taking his son for a fool. The boy said nothing, his small face bearing a maturity that was somehow heartbreaking. At that moment, a pretty woman came into the ward with a little girl dressed in a princess dress. A strong perfume clung to her, overwhelming the smell of disinfectant in the room. His son disliked strong scents the most. I used to love lilies, and there were often lilies in the house. After my son was born, before he had even learned to speak, he had already learned to carry the lilies out onto the balcony. I had secretly teased him about it for a long time. From then on, all the flowers at home were replaced with ones that had a faint, elegant fragrance. Is the baby right? She was the pure, unattainable moonlight in Gu Yan's heart. Linya, the girl she was holding by the hand, walked up to her son and, looking thoroughly unwilling, hurled the stuffed toy in her hand at his face. "This is from the mom who asked me to bring it to you." The girl showed no manners at all, and Linya did nothing to stop her. The doll was hurled at her son like that. Its eyes were made of glass, and it happened to strike her son right in the eye. Her son flinched in pain and subconsciously threw the doll to the ground. Linya immediately said tearfully, "Baby, don't you could this doll, Lingling, and I picked it out for you after a long time. Even if you don't like it, you shouldn't just throw it on the ground. Should you? Didn't your mother teach you that?" Not only did her words imply that her son had no manners, they also took a jab at me. Gu Yan frowned and scolded his son. "Is this how your mother taught you? Even if you don't like it, you shouldn't have thrown it away. It was someone else's kind gesture." My son's eyes turned red, and he looked utterly wronged. My heart ached. I reached out to hold him, but my hand passed through his tiny body and grasped nothing but empty air. As a soul, I won't even manage to hold him. I couldn't help but roar at Gu Yan. "Are you blind?" Our son's eye was hit by a glass marble. "He's in pain. So why aren't you comforting him instead of blaming him? Do you even deserve to be his father?" My angry shouts came one after another, but none of them reached his ears. A flash of satisfaction crossed Linya's eyes, but her face pretended to show concern as she said, "The child is still young. Teach him slowly, and he'll get better. No one taught him before, but from now on I'll teach him properly. When did the children of our Gu family need an outsider like you to teach them?" A voice rang out from outside the ward, calm yet commanding. Everyone looked up to see an elderly man with white hair walking in with a cane, followed by 2 bodyguards. The moment the child saw the old man, his little mouth puckered, and big tears began to spill down his cheeks as he held out his tiny arms for a hug. The old man's heart ached instantly. In 3 quick steps, he hurried forward and gathered him into his arms. Seeing that his grandson had grown thin, The old man flew into a rage and grabbed his cane, ready to strike Gu Yan. How have you been taking care of my grandson? I've only been abroad for half a month. And my great-grandson ends up in the hospital. And my granddaughter-in-law still thinking of something. The old man forcibly swallowed his anger and did not continue. The news of my death indeed isn't something suitable to bring up again and again. Lin Ye suddenly cut in. Grandpa, this isn't Yan's fault. It's all my fault. If I hadn't suddenly fainted in the mountains, Yan wouldn't have rushed over and missed the chance to save my sister. I'm willing to take responsibility for this. From now on, I'll do my best to take care of little Bao. I promise you. 4 days ago, Gu Yan had rarely suggested that the family go skiing in the mountains. His son was thrilled, saying that Daddy must be planning a surprise for him on his birthday, because the next day was his birthday. But when we went up the mountain the next day, the weather suddenly changed and it started snowing heavily. The three of us were trapped on the mountain, and Gu Yan's phone was the only one that could get a signal occasionally. I told him to call for help, but just then Lin Ye's daughter called, saying that her mother had fainted on the mountain. After receiving the call, Gu Yan threw us aside without another word and went off to find them. I begged him to leave his phone behind, but he said if he left it, he'd never be able to find the mother and daughter. Before he left, he said to his son, "Don't be afraid. The hotel knows we've gone up the mountain, and they'll definitely send people to look for us. Your Aunt Lin's life is still uncertain right now, and Dad has to go." After he left, my son asked me, "Mom, does Dad not know today is my birthday?" What he thought was a surprise turned out to be nothing but his own self-righteousness. I pulled my son tightly into my arms, pressing my body against his to keep him from losing warmth. But the snow that day was strange. Kept falling and never stopped. Yet when we checked the weather forecast, it had clearly said today would be bright and sunny. My son was the first to lose consciousness from the cold. I was terrified and hurriedly put every piece of clothing I had onto him, rubbing his little hands desperately. Perhaps heaven heard my plea. My son survived. Lin Ye's words sent the old man into a towering rage. He no longer cared about maintaining any dignity. Grasping his cane, he swung it fiercely at her. Gu Yan immediately stepped in front of Lin Ye and took the blow from the old man's cane with his body. The old man laughed in fury, his eyes dark and sinister. As expected of that woman's bastard. I never should have brought you back to the Gu family back then, only to let that woman's blood tarnish the Gu family's bloodline for nothing. Gu Yan was not a child raised by the Gu family. He was an illegitimate son. And when he was 19, the Gu family's only heir died in a plane crash. It was only then, with no other choice, that they brought him back. His mother was a host club girl who painstakingly seduced a young master of the Gu family, then secretly gave birth to Gu Yan afterward, believing she could soar to the skies and become the Gu family's madam. At the time, the young master of the Gu family already had a woman he liked, and she was from an equally well-matched background. On the day of their grand wedding, Gu Yan's mother showed up with her 7-month pregnant belly to cause a scene, only to be thrown out. If she hadn't run off in time, that 7-month-old fetus would have already been beaten out of her. After secretly giving birth to him, Gu Yan's mother repeatedly went to the Gu family to demand money and even took the initiative to request a paternity test. But the entire Gu household treated her like a joke and simply ignored her, unwilling to accept this reality. Gu Yan's mother suffered a mental breakdown. After Gu Yan was brought back to the Gu family, she had a brief period of lucidity, but then tried to fight the Gu family's madam for her place and was dealt with harshly by the Gu family's madam. Now, She lives in a sanatorium, supported by Gu Yen. What Gu Yen disliked most was having people bring up his mother. But the old man before him was someone he couldn't afford to provoke. He could only endure it. Seeing this, he took the initiative to kneel and said, "Grandpa, if you want to hit me or scold me, I'll accept it all. I handled this badly. And I promise you, this will absolutely never happen again." He was the kind of person who could bend and stretch. Today he could lower his head and kneel. Tomorrow he could just as easily stomp you into the mud. He was only waiting for the right opportunity. 3. Seeing Gu Yen kneel down, Linya also pulled her daughter to her knees before the old man. From a distance, they truly looked like a family of 3. The old man let out a cold snort and paid them no mind, nestled in the old man's arms. His grandson asked in a soft, milky voice, "Great-great-grandpa, where is my mommy?" The old man's voice caught, stroking his back. He said, "Your mommy has gone to a very faraway place. You'll only be able to see her when you grow up." Not all well-intentioned lies are right. The boy suddenly began to cry softly. "You all lied to me. Mom is dead. I don't have a mother, eh? Naimor." He cried so quietly. Yet it brought tears to the eyes of the haughty old man. "From now on, great-grandpa will keep you company." "All right. I once saved an old man's life. At the time, I was volunteering at a nursing home. In the farthest corner of the courtyard, someone had toppled into the pond along with his wheelchair. I couldn't swim, and there was no one else around to call for help. With no other choice, I grabbed a lift, e-ring and jumped into the pond, risking my own life to pull the old man out. Only later did I learn that the old man had been unable to bear the torment of illness, nor the sudden passing of his wife, and in a moment of despair had tried to end his life. Seeing that I had nearly drowned trying to save him, the old man abandoned the thought of taking his own life. After that, there was a young man by the old man's side. When Gu Yen had just been brought back, he was very obedient. Whatever the old man told him to do, he did. Over the past few years, as his power grew stronger, he grew a little less wary of the old man and a little more disrespectful. Even so, he still feared the old man deeply. Before his wings were fully grown, he did not dare confront the old man. Dawn. His son tightened his arms around the old man's neck, even with his legs and feet failing him. The old man still picked up his son. The bodyguards hurried to support him from the side. Just like that, the old man ignored the 3 people kneeling on the ground and carried his son away, without looking back. After I got home, my son would sometimes hold my photo and look at it. Whenever he missed me, he would call out, "Mom." Every time he called me Mom, I would answer him, just couldn't hear it. How I wished I could stay by his side a little longer. He was only 4 years old. Every time I thought of this, I wanted nothing more than to turn into a vengeful ghost and devour Gu Yen whole, if he had even a shred of conscience. On the way to find that mother and daughter, he had sent the rescuers the address. Sooner I wouldn't have frozen to death in such agony. But there are no vengeful ghosts in this world. Only a wisp of consciousness with a soul. The was nothing I could do. One afternoon at noon, Linya brought her daughter to visit her son. The old man had ordered the servants not to let Linya step through the gates of the Gu family villa, so she used her daughter as leverage, sending the girl running inside while she herself kept the servants tangled up at the villa entrance. Though her daughter was still young, she was already full of wicked tricks. Seeing her son squatting in the garden playing with sand, she ran over, scooped up a handful, and flung it at him. The wind suddenly shifted, and the sand blew straight into Linya's daughter's face. Just as Linya's daughter was about to laugh smugly, she suddenly got a mouthful of sand. And her eyes were filled with it too. She burst into tears. The boy looked up, saw the person he hated, and without saying a word, turned and walked into the villa. Hearing the crying, Linya shoved the maid aside and ran inside, before her son had even reached the villa. Linya, who had come rushing over, seized his wrist. How can you bully a girl? Apologize to her right now. Her son refused. Linya lowered her voice and said, You little bastard. Once I become your stepmother, the first thing I'll do is sell you off. 4. I was so furious I felt like I was about to explode. I rushed over, wanting to grab her hair and force her to let go of my son. But my hands were like air, unable to do anything at all. My son opened his mouth and bit down hard on her hand. Linya cried out in pain and slapped him across the face. My son clamped down on that piece of flesh so fiercely that he refused to let go. Just as he was about to bite that piece of flesh off, Linya pinched and hit him repeatedly. And only then did the servant rush over, but even so, they still couldn't coax their son into opening his mouth. I was frantic, saying to my son, Sweetheart, be good. This hand is dirty. Don't bite it, or your stomach will hurt. My words never reached his ears. Just then, Gu Yan came back from outside. Seeing this scene, he wasted no time rushing over and kicked our son hard in the butt. My son W. as kicked 2 meters away and fell to the ground. At that moment, I cursed Gu Yan like a madwoman, wishing him a miserable death for laying such a vicious hand on his own flesh and blood. Clutching her bleeding hand, Linya tearfully complained to Gu Yan about how my son had bullied her daughter, and how he had bitten her. As though my son were some utterly wicked criminal, Gu Yan's face was full of anguish, and he was furious enough to go after my son for accountability. But when he turned around, he saw that after crashing to the ground, my son had injured his forehead and was now lying in a servant's arms, his head covered in blood. Only then did Gu Yan panic. He ran to his son, scooped him up, and rushed toward the hospital. I drifted behind him, overcome with grief and fury, and anxious beyond measure. The hospital. When the old man arrived, he raised his hand and slapped Gu Yan across the face. For the first time, Gu Yan objected to the old man. He's young, but he can't be without even a shred of manners. He threw sand in a little girl's face, and he bit someone's Honda wouldn't let go even after drawing blood. If this keeps up, he'll be ruined for sure. Crack. The old man slapped him again, then brought his cane down hard on his leg. In the 3 minutes that followed, the old man used nearly all his strength and struck him more than a dozen times. I drifted out of the ward and, seeing this scene, felt a little better. Linya came out of another ward with her daughter. When she saw the scene, she rushed over and took the final blow on behalf of Gu Yan. Gu Yan's heart ached for her terribly, and he pulled her into his arms, saying to the old man, If you're going to hit someone, hit me, don't hit her. The old man reined in every expression on his face and sighed indifferently. This is the last time I will ever lay a hand on you. I have already drafted my will. From now on, the Gu group will be inherited by my great-grandson. Before he comes of age, I will hire a professional manager. You can get lost now. As soon as the old man said that, Gu Yan didn't even have time to panic before Linya got anxious first. She shouted loudly, Grandpa, you can't do this. A Yan is your own grandson. And he's smart too. With him here, the Gu group will definitely go even further. Isn't that what you've always wanted? The old man ignored her completely and turned to go back into the hospital room. In the old man's eyes, she was nothing but a fart, an obnoxiously long, foul fart. Seeing that the old man paid her no mind, Linya turned around again to persuade Gu Yen. Yen. Grandpa must have just been saying things in anger. Go and coax him quickly. You can't leave the Gu family. Gu Yen looked at her and said, even if I leave the Gu family now, I can still give you a very good life. You don't need to worry. Gu Yen really had started to get carried away. After being called young Master Gu, the President Gu, for more than 10 years, he actually believed that he could easily obtain all of this on his own. He didn't even stop to think how much money the Gu family had spent to build the Gu Corporation and secure their place as the country's richest. Once he left the Gu family, he was no thing but a fart. Even Linya could see all this. Yet he still couldn't, seeing that he stubbornly refused to admit his mistake. Linya could only take things one step at a time. After all, the only person she could rely on now was Gu Yen. She and Gu Yen had truly loved each other once. But Gu Yen cared more about power and status. After Gu Yen returned to the Gu family, the old man personally played matchmaker for him. At first, Gu Yen even thought I was some wealthy young miss, and treated me with great tenderness and attentiveness. Only later did he realize that my family background was ordinary, and he came to hate me in his heart, and I unbelievably had never noticed it. Out of regard for the old man's face, he carried on a fiery romance with me in public, while secretly being with Linya. Later, when the two of us got married, Linya even sneaked into the banquet. The old man gave her a sum of money and told her to leave. 5. She took the money, then turned around and told Gu Yen that the old man had used money to humiliate her. But she didn't refuse it either. She took the money and left. A few years later, she came back with a girl, whether out of guilt or because the white moonlight of his youth had a bewitching allure. As far as I know, Gu Yen never did any paternity test. He simply concluded that the girl was his own flesh and blood, and aired the mother and daughter with much affection. After the old man gradually relinquished power to him, he began to abandon the two of us, mother and son, and went swaggering off to find those two, mother and daughter. He was doing it simply to disgust me, and to tell the old man that now he could do whatever he pleased without being controlled by anyone. If I hadn't frozen to death, the old man would probably still have pinned his hopes on Gu Yen. Believing that Gu Yen could shoulder the burden of the Gu family, the old man had made the wrong bet once, and he would not repeat the same mistake. Gu Yen would never be able to turn things around. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. His son had grown into a tall, straight young man like a poplar tree, but over these years, he seldom smiled, though he had a handsome face. He was always wearing a stern expression. The only time one could see him smile was at the old man's birthday banquet. Today was the old man's 94th birthday. He was advanced in years and didn't want any grand celebration. So the elders in the family, just to make him happy, only invited the closest relatives to come for a meal. The two elders of the Gu family were also fairly concerned about their son, especially Madame Gu, though she was not his biological grandmother. She still cared about my son quite a bit and had not grown distant from him because of Gu Yan's matter. The old man took a liking to that very point, and wanted her to work hard to have another child. Finally, when she was 42, she gave birth to a daughter overseas. The old man cherished her as if she were a treasure. 2. Their son was very fond of that tiny ant. Whenever he had time, he would go see her. The two of them had Eve, and once sneaked off to an amusement park together. only to be found by the Gu elders, who had been so frightened they went weak at the knees. They punished them by making them kneel in the ancestral hall. At that time, the little ant was only 2 years old, and he was barely in his teens. After turning into a soul, the happiest thing for me every day was watching my son grow up. But over these past 2 years, I could clearly feel my soul becoming more and more transparent. I suppose I'm about to disappear very soon. Still, as long as my son can grow up healthy and well, I have no regrets. Auntie, you can't eat that. My son's serious voice rang out. He was holding little Ant's hand, pulling her over to the sofa. The 6-year-old little ant stood on the sofa, lifting her face as she tried to reason with her son, who was nearly 6 feet tall. I'm your aunt. What's wrong with eating a piece of cake? Her voice was soft and babyish, sending everyone else into peals of laughter. The son kept a straight face, but there was amusement in his eyes. He gently pinched the little ant's cheek, so round, like a little rice dumpling. The little ant got angry. She planted her hands on her hips, turned her face to the side, and huffed in anger. The son smiled, lifted her down from the sofa, and said, "You can only have one more bite." The little ant immediately laughed and planted a kiss on her son's cheek. "Nephew, you're so good." Everyone laughed even harder. The old man couldn't help but shake his head. Only he can keep this little monkey in check. Gu's mother smiled with a face full of kindness. This scene is so lovely. I really wish it could stay like this forever. Ever since her son died, she had grieved for a long time. After Gu Yan came, his attempts to curry favor with her were far too obvious. She could only deal with him on the surface while staying guarded in her heart. It was only after my son was born that she would come to see me every few days, always carrying a big pile of things. She despised Gu Yan, but she liked my son. Seeing that my son's white shirt had been stained by her daughter's cake, Madame Gu took out a handkerchief and wiped at it for him. When she found she couldn't get the stain out, she told him to go back to his room and change clothes, saying that several important elders would be arriving later and he couldn't afford to be rude. After my son went upstairs, it was only a short while before 3 uninvited guests appeared at the door: Gu Yan, Linya, and their newborn son, 6. Seeing the 3 of them, Madame Gu hurriedly called for someone to drive them away. Unexpectedly, before coming, the 2 of them had already sent paparazzi to lurk at the entrance for gossip. Once they were chased off, the Gu family's reputation would certainly be damaged again. The 2 were already husband and wife, and together they had 2 daughters and 1 son. During that time, they made countless attempts to stir up momentum and announce that they wanted to return to the Gu family. But the Gu family never once responded to them, letting them spread all manner of rumors to their heart's content. As time went on, people began to sympathize with the Gu family and grow disgusted with them. Especially Gu Yan. His wings had grown strong enough that he could thrive even after leaving the Gu family. In fact, the moment he stepped out of the Gu family, he was blacklisted by the circle. He took the money he had saved up and started a company, thinking he could turn things around and become a boss as easily as in a TV drama. As it turned out, he couldn't land a single contract for 3 straight months, with no other choice. He went everywhere begging for help. Linya gave him a suggestion: go back to the Gu family. Gu Yan refused. He was gambling too, betting that the old man would die within these 2 years. That Father Gu's heart still leaned toward him. As long as the old man died, there was still a very good chance the Gu family would fall into his hands. But the ailing old man lived for another 10 years. Not only did he personally raise my son and teach him his skills, He also took him around to build up solid connections and relationships. By now, everyone in the circle tacitly agrees that the future heir of the Gu family is my son. Gu Yan was both irritated and furious. Yet there was nothing he could do. As for him now, he was running a small company, and his annual income couldn't even match what he used to spend on clothes in a single year. He had promised Linya a good life, and in the end Linya followed him through 10 years of hardship, even putting in a great deal of money of her own, including the money she had earned as someone's mistress. Linya had staked the rest of her life on him. The sunk cost was too great. She could no longer back out. So she could only keep going with Gu Yan. One child after another was born. And now that she had delivered a son, she felt she had another bargaining chip in her hand, which was why she had specially chosen today to come to the door. Compared with before, Gu Yan's back had bent much more. His attitude toward the old man was so respectful it was almost reverent. As though he were ready to put him on a pedestal, the old man cast a glance at the three of them. His expression faint and unreadable. Mother Gu shot Father Gu a look, signaling him to handle them. Father Gu, for reasons known only to him, actually asked Linya to bring the child over so the old man could have a look. With a face full of delight, Linya carried her son over and said, "This is your great-grandson. Have a look, so adorable." She even deliberately pulled back the little blanket wrapped around the child, letting the old man make sure this was a boy. The old man cast a reluctant glance and said he was tired, then went upstairs to rest, supported by 2 servants. The old man went upstairs. The son stood at the bend of the staircase, coldly staring at the couple. Gu Yan was unwilling to let the old man leave like this. He caught up and said, "Grandpa, I was ignorant before, but I've changed now. Can't you give me one more chance?" Mrs. Gu frowned and said, "You're already no longer part of the Gu family. Letting you in today was purely because it's the old master's birthday, and we didn't want to make a scene. Yet now that you're inside, it's still for that little matter. Do you only have money in your eyes? Or is heir nothing else?" Mrs. Gu might not say a word, but the moment she did, she nailed Gu Yan right on the head as a greedy man. Gu Yan clenched his teeth and forced out a flattering smile. "The blood running through my veins is Gu family blood. How could I not be a member of the Gu family? I didn't come back for money. I came to share the burden for Grandpa and Dad. A woman like you wouldn't understand." He was trying to mock Mrs. Gu with veiled sarcasm. Gu's mother sneered outright. "You don't think bringing a boy to our door means you can come back to the Gu family, do you?" The old man only acknowledges one great-grandson and one great-granddaughter. As for the rest of you outsiders, he recognizes none of you. Gu Yan's eyes turned vicious. Just when everyone thought he wouldn't dare strike in front of so many people, he suddenly lunged forward without the slightest warning and threw a punch straight at Gu's mother. His son was the first to react. He almost launched himself at him, tackling Gu Yan to the ground. Gu's mother was startled. She instinctively stumbled backward and accidentally hit the edge of the table, wincing in pain. She saw my son throw a punch at Gu Yan, and hurriedly stepped forward to try to mediate. "Good boy. Don't fight. If he walks out later with a face full of bruises, he'll definitely spread lies in front of the paparazzi. He's already a pile of rotten mud. You can't let him drag you down." The son froze for a moment, and Gu Yan seized the opening to land a punch on him. Blood appeared at the corner of the son's mouth. The next second, Mother Gu took off her shoe and grabbed the high heel, beating Gu Yan with it in a furious flurry. "I'll let you hit my grandson. If I don't beat you to death today, I'll change my surname too." By the end of it, even 2 servants couldn't hold Madame Gu back. The old man stood by, Watching the spectacle, Father Gu did want to step forward and pull her away. But Madame Gu was far too formidable. He didn't dare go over. AFR. She'd take him on as well. The relatives present were all close kin. And who among them didn't know the family's business? With the old man enjoying the show. They all stood by and watched too. Gu Yan was beaten so badly that he fled in utter disarray. His face and body covered with bruises from the stiletto heels. Lin Ye wanted to stop her. But she was holding the child and it wasn't convenient. On the stairs, seeing her mother fighting back with all her might, the little aunt did not forget to clap her hands and cheer. Mommy is a superhero. Beating up the bad guys. Everyone found it hard to hold back their laughter. In the end, those three were driven away. In the end, a birthday banquet was ruined. A few days later, Auntie was kidnapped. 7. The Gu family villa was very close to the kindergarten. Only a 10-minute walk away. In order to exercise her daughter, Madame Gu usually had a maid hold her hand and walk her there. But by evening that day, Madame Gu still hadn't seen the maid bring her daughter back. When she called the kindergarten, they said that an hour earlier, the little girl had been picked up by someone. Madame Gu realized that something had gone wrong with the maid and hurriedly called her. But the phone was switched off. When her son came home from school and learned what had happened, he immediately opened the computer. It turned out that 2 days ago, his Tli aunt had insisted on playing hide and seek with him. He still had homework to finish and didn't want to play with her. So he brushed her off and gave her a brooch with a tracking device inside. The villa was huge, with 2 gardens as well. After her son installed the tracker on her, whenever she ran to the east side, he would hide on the west side, keeping it up until his little aunt truly couldn't find him and broke down crying. Then, all the while putting on an act and saying his Tli aunt was stupid and couldn't find him. He secretly rejoiced that this method was really brilliant. Watching my son's lively, mischievous little antics, I sincerely felt grateful to Gu Mu for giving birth to such a little bundle of joy. Without this little peacemaker, her son would probably spend the rest of his life unable to escape the shadow of my dying at his side. After Mother Gu calmed down, she remembered the hide and seek game. But she worried that her daughter might have already taken off the brooch and tossed it aside. At that moment, the kidnapper called. Mother Gu answered. And the other side demanded 20 million in ransom. Gu's mother agreed, only begging them not to hurt her daughter. Half an hour later, Gu's father rushed back. Upon learning that the kidnappers were demanding 20 million, he wanted to hand the matter over to Gu Yan to handle. As a and to give Gu Yan an opportunity and see once more how capable he was at dealing with things. Gu's mother hesitated. But in her heart, she had no one else to choose. The son stood up and said, I found Auntie's address. I'm going over. Mother Gu was so frightened that she hurriedly grabbed him. No. It's too dangerous. Father Gu also said. Yes. You're still young. Let your dad go. The boy glanced at Father Gu and asked, Grandpa, aren't you worried the kidnapper might be Gu Yan? After I died. He never called Gu Yan dad again. Father Gu pressed his lips together and said nothing. So when he learned the kidnappers were demanding 20 million, he had already guessed that the kidnappers might be Gu Yan. Gu Yan's company had gone bankrupt, and his whole family had even applied to immigrate. All of it required money. Seeing that Father Gu had fallen silent, Mother Gu slapped the back of his head. You already guessed it was him. And you still dared to let him come up with the money. What exactly is in that head of yours? Father Gu didn't dare say another word. Next, they split into 3 teams. The son called the police and set off with them. Mother Gu stayed at home and kept the kidnappers engaged, acting very worried. Father Gu, meanwhile, pretended to contact Gu Yan in secret, telling him that his younger sister had been kidnapped and hoping he would go deliver the ransom. This method worked very well, successfully deceiving Gu Yan. An hour later, Auntie was rescued. She was terrified. Her small hands clutching her son's collar tightly, while comforting her. Her son called Madame Gu to let her know they were safe. Just then, a car came hurtling toward them. The youngest aunt was the first to notice and screamed that a car was coming. By the time her son realized what was happening, his body had already reacted first, and he threw himself to the side. The police officers and bodyguards present reacted swiftly, placing themselves between them. The car still refused to give up. After failing to hit anyone the first time, it quickly hit the accelerator again and launched a second attempt to ram them. The police opened fire. Bang! Bang, 2 shots. The person in the car was hit in the arm. In an instant, the car crashed into a big tree. With a boom, flames erupted. The person in the driver's seat was engulfed in fire all over. He tumbled down from the driver's seat, crying for help. When his son saw him, he blankly covered his little aunt's eyes and turned to leave. It was Gu Yan. He had been burned half to death, and in the end he was sentenced to 30 years. It was simply worse than death. Linya abandoned her 4 children and ran away. Although she was no longer young, she still looked decent. And before long she married an honest man. But the honest man couldn't stand seeing her spend money. Every time she spent even a single cent, it would earn her a beating from him. The woman who loved money most was eventually beaten to death on the road to spending it. The day my son came of age, my soul turned transparent. I am about to disappear. But I still couldn't bear to part. Why? My son. I kissed his forehead. In the sunlight, I faded away little by little. My son seemed to sense something and looked up toward the direction where I was fading away. But he couldn't see anything at all. A pretty girl came over and took his hand. Young master, why are you hiding? Here. Come on. It's time to cut the cake. My son nodded. I smiled with relief. Let it end here. There were no regrets left. The next second, I disappeared completely. The end.